This video is about evaluating algebraic expressions by substituting numbers for the variables. So the first step in all of these sorts of problems is to look at the numbers you've been given. So in this case, we're given that x equals 1 and y equals 2. And go ahead and substitute those in for the variables in your expression. So substitute just basically means replace. So we're going to replace all of the x's with 1s and all of the y's with 2s. So we'll start at the beginning. We see we have an x squared, and we see that our x is 1. So we're going to write 1 squared. We have times y, and y is 2. So we write 2 parentheses x plus y. So x is 1, y is 2. So we write 1 plus 2. So that's the numerator of our fraction here. So now we'll do the denominator. We start with x, which is 1, plus 3y. And 3y really means 3 times y. So we'll write 3 times, and y is 2, so 3 times 2. All right, and once we have all that substituted, so at this point you should not have any variables left, we can go ahead and actually evaluate this expression. So we do that using the order of operations. So the first thing in the order of operations is parentheses. So we're going to look, we see we do, in this case, have some parentheses. Inside the parentheses is 1 plus 2. So inside the parentheses, we'll go ahead and evaluate that. Everything else isn't changing, so we're just going to copy it over. So we keep our 1 squared times 2. Now inside the parentheses, 1 plus 2 is 3. And just like before with the 3y, that's actually 3 times y, here there really is a multiplication symbol between the 2 and the parentheses. So instead of writing parentheses now, we can just write times, and the 1 plus 2 becomes 3. The denominator, we do not have any parentheses, so we're just going to keep 1 plus 3 times 2. And so then moving on to our next step, after parentheses in the order of operations comes exponents. We have one exponent here. We have the 1 squared, so that's going to be the next thing that we take care of. So 1 squared means 1 times 1, and 1 times 1 is 1. So 1 squared becomes 1, and the rest of it copies over. So after parentheses and exponents, we have division. Now we do have division here. All right, this fraction bar is division, but we're actually going to go ahead and skip division whenever we have things that we need to still simplify in either the numerator or the denominator. So right now, the numerator is not simplified and the denominator is also not simplified. So we're going to save division and come back to it later. So after division is multiplication. We definitely do have multiplication. So up top, we have 1 times 2 times 3. All right, so 1 times 2 is 2, and then 2 times 3 is 6. So our numerator becomes 6. Our denominator, we have 1 plus 2 times 3 is 6. So now we have 6 over 1 plus 6. The next step in our operations is addition. And so the numerator is just 6 still. The denominator, we have 1 plus 6. 1 plus 6 is 7. And so we have 6 over 7. And now at this point, you can either use a calculator to get a decimal answer, or you can just go ahead and leave it as a fraction. And since this fraction cannot be simplified, that becomes our final answer. All right, let's do another example. So here we have 13a minus 4b divided by 2 times a plus b plus 3. And we have a is negative 2 and b is 4. So just like before, we're going to start by substituting in our values for a and b into the expression that we're going to simplify. So we're going to write our 13, instead of a is negative 2, so we're going to write times negative 2. Then we have minus 4 times b, and b is 4, so 4 times 4. Our denominator is 2, and then in the parentheses, a plus b. So a is negative 2, plus b is negative 4, and then plus 3. Our next step is parentheses, because now that we've gotten rid of all of the variables and we just have numbers, we can go ahead to the order of operations. So simplifying the parentheses, we see only one set here. We have -2 plus 4. And just remembering, -2 plus 4 is the same as 4 minus 2, 4 plus -2. And 4 minus 2 we know is 2. So we're going to copy everything down except the parentheses. So we have 13 times -2 minus 4 times 4 over 2 times, and then what's in the parentheses we saw was 2, so 2 times 2 plus 3. Our next step of in the order of operations is exponents. We do not have any exponents here, so we get to skip and go on to our next step, which is division. Just like before, we're not going to do the division until we've simplified our numerator and our denominator. And so we're going to go then to multiplication. We do have plenty of multiplication here. So the first multiplication we see is 13 times -2. Now 13 times 2 is 26, which means 13 times -2 is -26. And then we have minus 4 times 4, and 4 times 4 is 16. So the numerator becomes -26 minus 16. Draw a fraction bar, and for the denominator, we first see 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and then we have plus 3. The next step after multiplication is addition. So our first thing is -26 minus 16. And let's go ahead and do that off to the side as well. So since they're both negative, that means our final answer will be negative. So if we just go ahead and add 26 plus 16, 6 plus 6 is 12, so we get our 2, carry the 1. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4. So we get 42. Since these were both negative, our final answer is negative. And so our numerator will be -42. And if you aren't comfortable doing that arithmetic by hand, you can go ahead and use a calculator for that. You should get the same answer. So our numerator is -42 divided by 4 plus 7. That is, 4 plus 3. That is 7. So now we have -42 over 7. And now that we have our numerator simplified and our denominator simplified, we can go ahead and simplify the fraction, which is the division step that we skipped earlier. So 42 divided by 7 is 6. And so since we have one negative sign, we're going to continue having one negative sign. So the answer is -6. All right. So here is another problem. Go ahead, pause the video, and try this by yourself, and then press play to see the answer. All right, so the first step, of course, is to substitute in the values that we were given. So we were given that s equals 3 and r equals -2. So the very first thing we see here is an s. So instead of s, we'll be writing 3. And then parentheses, we have s minus 3. So s is 3. So we have 3 minus 3. And then plus 2r. So plus 2 times, don't forget your times in between 2 and r is -2. Our denominator starts with a 5. Don't forget your times. And then r squared. Now the important thing when squaring a negative number is to keep that negative number in parentheses until you are done with the square. So that becomes -2 in parentheses to the second power. Now we can go ahead and simplify. So the first step is always parentheses. So everything's going to stay the same except for what's in parentheses. So we have 3 times, and then 3 minus 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. So we have 3 times 0 plus 2 times -2 over 5 times -2 to the second. Next step is exponents. We have one exponent here. We have -2 to the second power. So that means -2 times -2. Now 2 times 2 is 4. And since we have two negatives, that's going to make it a positive. So we're going to have that as a 4, and everything else is just going to stay exactly how it is. At this point, we are ready to go on to division, but of course we are going to be skipping division until we simplify both the numerator and denominator. So it is time for multiplication. So 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 times negative 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, and we have one negative, so it's going to be a negative 4. So we have 0 plus negative 4. And then our denominator is 5 times 4, which is 20. We're moving on to addition. We have 0 plus negative 4, which can be a little confusing because you have a plus and a minus next to each other. But remember that anytime you have a plus and a minus, you can go ahead and replace that with just 1 minus. Now 0 minus 4 is negative 4. And our denominator is 20. Now that you have simplified both the numerator and denominator, you still have to simplify the fraction. So we can look at this and see that 4 goes into both 4 and 20. So if we divide both numerator and denominator by 4, then negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. And 20 divided by 4 is 5. So our final answer is negative 1 over 5.